In this video, we're going to walk through how to deploy your DevOps monitoring tooling with StackEngine, using Datadog as an example. Starting at the StackEngine dashboard, you can see a number of tabs and concepts on the left-hand navigation, including applications, components, containers, images, and hosts. Containers, images, and hosts are probably familiar to you if you've played with Docker. In StackEngine, components are essentially pointers or instructions on where to obtain images or resources, and an application can be created from one or more components. Multi-tiered or multi-service applications can be defined and run across one or more hosts leveraging these concepts. Let's start in components and click on that. You can see that there are a number of Docker components defined out of the box. If we click on the Registries tab at the top, we can see that a connection to the Docker Hub public registry is defined out of the box, and we've defined a number of components or pointers to Docker Hub images for you. In this case, we want to run Datadog on our host. So let's go to our browser and check out the Docker Public Hub and search for Datadog. Looks like the first one's coming up here. Here we go, we found it. And there's an example Docker run command for the Datadog image that's provided here. Let's put this screen side by side with StackEngine. Okay, now we have StackEngine and the Docker Public Hub side by side. Let's navigate back to StackEngine and create a new component for Datadog. Okay, so let's give our component a name. We're going to call it Datadog. We need the full path to the Datadog image from the repository. So let's copy that over and remove any spaces here. We're also going to go with the latest image tag for that image. You can see in the tags tab here that there's a number of older versions, but we want the latest version. And let's go ahead and save that. So that now we've defined our Datadog component, or telling StackEngine where to obtain that latest image, let's go and create an application that leverages that component, or an application template. So if we click on New Application, we're going to call this our Datadog app, and click on Save. And you can create multiple versions of an application template. So let's create our first version of this application. And you can see that on the right hand side we have components that we can drag into our app. We're just going to leverage the Datadog component for this application. So now let's map the Docker run command on the left hand side into the instructions for how to run this component in StackEngine. So we can see we have the name of the container, which has already been populated for us from the component name. StackEngine is going to automatically run it on a host, so we don't need to worry about the host name. But you can see there's a few volumes defined here in the format of host volume, container volume, and then any read-write permissions. And by default, if there aren't any, it's considered read-write. So let's add these three volumes into our application definition here. So the host volume, the first host volume is /var here. The container volume is the same here. And since there's no read-write permissions, it's read-write by default. Let's add our second volume. So we have the host volume, proc mounts. We have host proc mounts for the container volume. And looks like this is a read-only permission. And then our final volume here, copy across the host volume, copy across the container volume, and looks like we have a read-only permission here on this volume. So going back over to the Docker run command, it looks like one final thing we need to do here is define an environment variable called our API key. You can get an API key from signing up for a Datadog trial, or if you're a Datadog customer, you should have an API key. So let's go ahead and add that environment variable, and it is API_key, and I have an API key that I obtained earlier. So let's apply that. So now we've defined our Datadog application template. We only have one component, that is our Datadog component, and we've given it instructions based on the Docker run on which volumes to mount and the API key. So let's go ahead and save that off. So now we can see we have a Datadog application that's been defined. We've given a version. Again, we can have multiple versions of an application template. We haven't launched any instances of this application, and we can see up the top here, and we're about to go do that. So let's go ahead and launch an instance of the Datadog application that we've defined and click on the launch button. We can see here that StackEngine requires a tag to be placed on an application that you launch, or an application template that you launch. So let's give this a latest tag, create that, and call this our Datadog app instance. And we only have one host defined, and hosts can be grouped into resource pools. We only have one host in the default resource pool right now, so we're just going to deploy Datadog on our one host here and click launch. So this is the application instance screen that will provide you with information about the application instance that's being launched. You can also monitor progress. If you go to the tasks tab on the left hand side, you can see that Datadog is being started here. You can see it's actually completed. So we should actually have, if we go to the containers tab, we should actually have a running, you can see here our Datadog instance of the application we defined running on our one host here in our environment. Now if we head over to the Datadog UI, we can start to find dashboards that show metrics and information about both containers and the hosts on which they run. So for example, you can see the top containers here by Docker CPU load, and you can see that we have a total of 3 containers. We actually had a WordPress application running a database and a WordPress container here as well. So simple video on how to start your first DevOps monitoring tooling with Datadog, how to import that component, how to set up your application, and how to start that running in your environment.